All right. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with a roll call. McKee here. Schultz? Here. Bottomer?
Present.
Barenkamp? Here. Nichols? Here. Perfect. Next, we'll want to stand and join in on the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Agenda approval. Is there anything from staff?
Mayor and Council, we do have one agenda item per the conversation at the work session tonight. Kevin's recommending we pull item 7F off of consent, just to clarify, potentially allowing Kevin to adjust that proposal based upon the conversation, and he can walk through that if we do it maybe right after consent, or if you want to put it at new business later on.
Either that, or can't we just pull it during consent and then do it
I suppose, yeah,
separately?
that'd be a great way to do it.
Okay.
Yep, just so you know.
Just
And then,
do it that way.
just for those who are present here or online, we do have the public comment opportunities at a couple locations tonight. We have open forum, which is for items not on the agenda. And then we have a public opportunity at planning business, unfinished business, and new business. And we also do have the continuation of the assessment hearing as well. And then per our operating procedures, we do limit to 5 minutes, at which time I would notify the mayor that we've reached that time, and the mayor or council can look at extending if they wish to do so. So that is all from staff.
Thank you.
One additional note, can I have 2 minutes to talk about yesterday, the fire drill that we had?
Sure.
I don't know where that.
You want to, where you,
Doing our staff reports.
yeah, want to make your own report at the end?
Yeah.
12?
Yeah, 12C,
Perfect.
John Bottom's report.
Sounds good, and just feel free to remind me, because I might skip over it in my.
Hey,
typing
Alan,
stuff.
can you remind me to remind?
I got it written down.
One of us will get it.
I got it on my phone.
Anything else from council? All right, then I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as modified.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Commission representatives, we have Meredith Wu and Tom Anderson from Planning and Parks and Trails respectively, and I'm assuming both online? Perfect. Good deal. And we have open forum for items not on tonight's agenda, and Jessica will walk us through that.
Perfect. Anyone who is joining us virtually, you can press *9 if you're on a phone, or you can press the reactions button if you are joining us via computer or tablet, and press raise your hand, and then we'll recognize you and ask you to state your name and address for the record. Mayor, at this time, no one's raised their hand, but we do have one person who's joining us in person would like to speak.
Greg Woolen.
Perfect. Go right ahead.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Greg Hogan. I'm at 19220 Blackmore Road. Believe it or not, I listened to the previous council meeting on the topic of when you guys were talking about the PUD amendment with Lennar. And I listened to that, probably about an hour of discussion with our friends from Lennar. And I want to compliment and thank you guys as a mayor and council for the first time in probably 7 to 8 years living side by side of my good friends Lennar. It's the first time I've ever heard any pushback on the large national developer from a mayor or council. And you got to understand, I've lived here 22 years. I was probably one of the first people that had the luxury of having to live next to Ravinia development. And as you guys were talking about the stockpiles and the little tactics that they're using, many of those fall into a pattern with a company, okay? And as you know, I've been very vocal throughout. the
No,
years.
not at all. Okay,
And
I'm sorry.
And I've lived my entire life with the motto that if I'm having a problem with somebody, lots of people are having problems with somebody. Sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes 6 years, but eventually somebody else gets the luxury of having the same problem that I'm having. So I've seen what Lennar's done to the Tabors, the Hagers, the Hoaglands, anyone that comes in their way. And believe me, I grew up in rural, I've been out in rural Plymouth since '88. I've sold land to developers. I understand developers, okay? But the pattern here, going back from when Mr. Gunther was our mayor, and Ron Thomas, and several councils, nobody's pushed back. I've stood up here many times. I never even got a response from a mayor or a council. And many of these were repeated construction hour violations. I had my yard flooded twice with 8 acres of straw, manure, soil erosion. And I had the developer and the city basically on my bridge, pretty much telling me it was my problem. And I go back to what Dean said last time, if my tree fell on your property, I'd be the first person out there at 6 a.m. to chainsaw that thing, okay? As they flooded my yard, and I was pushing back on them, the tactic they used was to defame me and my wife with not one, but not two, not 3 false purchase agreements on city public records saying that Lennar has been in conversations with the Hoaglands. I'm in sales. I don't have dementia. I would know if somebody was talking to me and my wife about buying my property. But there's a pattern here, and I'm thankful that somebody, for the first time, actually had the courage to debate them, because they're used to steamrolling towns and people or anyone in their way. Ask the Tabors, ask the Hoaglands, ask the Hagers, and I just want to thank you for at least having the courage to stand up to them, and it's the first time. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Council, we have nobody else online.
Okay. And, presentations, we don't have any. Consent agenda consisting of items 7A through E and, or let's just pull F. So 7A through E and G. Is there anything else that anyone wanted to pull?
Just G.
G? Okay, so we want to pull F and G.
I like G also.
Perfect. Okay, then I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items A through E.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So we'll go to 7F, which staff wanted to pull.
Devin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Per discussions at the work session regarding water supply and some of the storage siting potentially in the city park and some of the conversations we had related to groundwater, I just request that you amend the approval or authorization to allow me to work with the engineers on identifying any additional soil boring work that's needed. I'd probably anticipate, if you need a number, 50% more just to cover myself, but it might be less, it probably would be less than that. So that would be 27.5, maybe cap me at 40 grand, or just trust me that it's what's needed, however you want to go about that.
Never trust an engineer. I say that out loud, I'm sorry.
50% more over 14.3?
No, well, no, I'm saying like I don't think it'll be this. I don't have the information, but just doubling it from 27, adding another 50% as a cap. Which
Oh, making it
would be.
Making it 27,000?
No, I think it is 27,000 right
And
now.
next,
So I'm asking for another 50% cap.
Oh, sorry, I'm looking at E. I'm sorry.
Or if you want to just do a number, at 40,000 is pretty close to that, I think. So however you want to go about it, I just would like to collect additional geotechnical information based on our siting conversation or.
I'll move to amend to 40,000 for option 1.
Second.
any further discussion?
With things that we're experiencing and the expertise of variety of engineering groups and stuff, I don't think we can do enough soil borings and stuff to make this location stick, so I'd be extremely generous, so 40,000 is the number. I'd even go higher, but I'll hold the 40. If he needs more, he can come back
We'll
and
ask.
ask.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Perfect. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay,
I wasn't part of that discussion.
gotcha.
Be careful about saying how loose the wallet is when you're talking about tax.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna do what's right for all of us. You missed some other conversations, so we,
What was the other one, G?
Yeah.
what we'll spend here.
Go right ahead. You-
We can talk more.
I know, makes me nervous.
Okay.
You guys all right? I just wanted to confirm that by voting table this, we're continuing the moratorium on building permits.
Correct.
Okay. Then I'll move to accept 7G.
If I could make
Yeah.
more
Go ahead.
comments.
We have a motion, I'll second it.
Okay.
Then any further discussion?
Got it, I'm sorry. There's more than the 3 piles of dirt on that property that are not part of the original parcel, so I hope there's more consideration on their part, that there is dirt storage, and it's already been even covered by the straw and stuff. There's more than 3 piles, so I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not pleased.
Has there been
I'll stay
any
that way.
activity?
Not that I really know of.
Kevin, anywhere from Nick or Rowdy, anything you've heard out there?
No, I think they're still grading up what's in Tavera Second Edition, so kind of north of, more north of the break, if you want to call it that. So closer to the 66 extension. They're still excavating. That's part of the original plan, so I'll definitely make sure the team monitors that, but I don't believe they've touched any of the piles.
No.
I did submit some plans after our deadline, so it will likely be back in front of you at the November 10th meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Kevin.
That's good. Is there anything else on that? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On to the assessment hearing continuation for Corcoran Trail East and West Improvements Project.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. As you mentioned, this is a continuation of the project we talked about last meeting. Just again, the history here, this started back in February when staff identified Corcoran Trail East and West as needed pavement improvements. We were originally looking at an overlay, however, we found that that wasn't going to be sufficient, so we looked at a more significant project. We held a neighborhood meeting back in April. I had a feasibility study, the improvement hearing, the assessment hearing again on October 14th, and continuing that tonight based upon direction from the council to amend the resolution for those 2 vacant properties to defer those assessments for up to 20 years with some conditions. The project is substantially complete as we speak at this point. Again, back to financing, $590,000 is the project estimate, with the city contribution of a pretty substantial portion of that. The original special assessment amount was $176,000. It's still keeping that number, potentially could come in, but it likely will reduce that number a little bit if we approve the resolution as drafted this evening. Again, we have 9 properties at the 10,800 number, and then 22 properties at 3,600. Again, if those 2 properties never would come in within 20 years, it'd be $7,000 more, 7,200 on the city's dime over the life. If they did come in, of course, that would not happen. So the action tonight was to continue the assessment hearing, close that hearing, and then consider a motion approving the assessment roll with the resolution in front of you tonight that's been amended. The city attorney did draft that resolution per your direction and is here as well. That's all I have.
All right. Do we need a motion to close that hearing?
After we continue.
Yes, yeah. Okay. So unless there's anything the main question would be, is this is kind of what you were talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure it was on the same page. So we'll go ahead and continue the assessment hearing?
Jessica, do you want to walk through the online?
Yes, if anyone is joining us online who wants to participate in the assessment hearing, you can press *9 if you're on the phone, or click reactions and raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. Mayor, at this point, no one is currently raising their hand, and if anyone in the audience is interested in speaking, you can come up to the podium and state your name and address, and we'll recognize you. At this time, no one
Sounds
has
good.
raised their hand.
I will say I had a couple conversations over the past week with a couple different people, including Brian Toussaint, who's here regarding the vacant property, who said that that was what he really desired for the vacant property. He said he still might challenge in district court the other assessment, but understands that where we're at tonight. So he was actually told me he probably wasn't going to attend. And then I spoke to Ron and Carol Eastbourne quite a bit today, a couple times, and they knew about everything, and we're going to decide kind of last minute if they wanted to attend, and I don't see them either in person, obviously, or online. So I believe those are really the majority of people. There's one other, I forget the name at this point, but I know we've been in good discussions with them, so.
Perfect. Okay, well then if there's still no one,
Still no one?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to close the assessment hearing.
So moved.
Any just,
Second.
yeah, John and Al, that works. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Then, so we still need a motion.
May I ask a question about the wording of it?
Yep.
So what you introduced is item 4, correct?
Correct.
So if I'm reading this right, it's deferred until a building permit for construction of a structure designed for human occupancy on undeveloped property. In the event of a such building permit issuance, the assessment contemplated within the attached rule shall become immediately due and payable in full. So are we saying that they have to pay the full amount of the assessment at that point?
Correct.
But if, let's say that's 3 years from now, right? 3 years from now, they pull a building permit, they have to pay it in full, but if I'm the guy next door, I get assessed day 1, but I have 10 years to pay it. So the way this is written to me, I was anticipating that the assessment would become, the clock would start ticking when the building permit is issued, so that basically, from the building permit standpoint, now the 10-year window begins. He can pay it in full or pay it in installments at that point. That was my intent.
Yeah, and maybe, John, you can answer this, but my assumption is you have to set up the terms at some point as part of the 429 process, and that might be difficult, but you can answer that.
Right, yeah, it's a situation where you can accomplish that. You have to stay within your 30-year limit, but you can roll it forward from whenever that happens. It's just you'll have more uncertainty about when the sunset of those payments would be.
I would say from a practical standpoint, it's going to be somebody else buying the lot, and it's probably contingent as part of the sale anyway to clean up any assessments that are out there. So from a practical standpoint, they would just roll that into the 30-year mortgage.
Okay.
So I think you'd probably get the same effect, if not a longer term, if you rolled it into the purchase price of the property and the mortgage.
And that is why it's more typical to just make it
Part of the sale?
Yeah.
Okay.
right.
All right, then I'm fine with it.
With that? Okay. Anything else on it? I'll go ahead and entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2021-119, adopting the assessment roll for the Corcoran Trail East and West Street Improvement Project as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
One,
Yeah.
I've had a couple of the neighbors ask, when will it be complete? The equipment sitting on one of the exits or one of the entrances too, and then obviously, I assume there's gravel that's gonna go both sides of the kind of an apron around this and stuff, when will that stuff be done on our part?
I think any of the shouldering work and the cleanup work will all be done this year. We had a conversation today about the equipment out there with the construction team. More than likely, everything will be done this fall, and the restoration work, the establishment of the turf and whatnot will roll into next spring.
Right,
So
okay.
It'll carry into next spring just from really a warranty aspect, and everything else will get cleaned up here, I would anticipate relatively soon with
Okay.
weather and snow. Whenever that comes, they want to get all that stuff out of there. So we're aware of it, but appreciate
A
it.
few of the neighbors have asked, so thank you. That's all I have.
All right, if there's nothing else, then all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, guys. On to, if I can find my page. Planning business, we have another public comment opportunity, and that's for 9, A, B, and C, and then we will go right into 9A.
Correct, Mayor and Council, so the A, B, and C, the 9A is the Amberley Bellwether, 9B is the zoning amendment, and 9C is the construction hours update. And Jess, if you want to walk through online.
Sure. If anyone's joining us online who would wish to comment, you can go ahead and press *9, or under the reactions button, press the raise your hand button. Mayor, at this time, no one is raising their hand online, and we have not received any comment cards that
Sounds good.
anyone would like to speak here in person.
And we'll go right into 9A.
And with Natalie.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. So the first item tonight is the final plat and final PUD for Amberley First Edition and Bellwether Sixth Edition. Next slide. So this phase looks to begin platting the Van Blaricom property that's highlighted here on the slide. Next slide. And this phase consists of 87 single-family home lots and 7 outlots. 62 of these homes will be for Bellwether Sixth Edition, 25 homes in the First Edition of Amberley. The preliminary plat, or based on the preliminary plat, there will be 105 homes remaining for future phases. As a part of Bellwether Sixth Edition, there is parkland to be dedicated. This is actually a typo. There was a revision submitted. It's actually 6.6 acres of parkland and includes land for a potential well and water tower site. This phase also initiates the Stieg Road improvements, and grading and trunk infrastructure is already underway due to a early grading permit that was granted last month. So these are the 25 homes for Amberley First Edition highlighted in green. And you'll also see a new access point onto Stieg Road. Next slide. And then to the south, we have the 60, I've already forgotten the number, I apologize, but the 60-plus homes for Bellwether 6, highlighted in green, as well as Outlot F, highlighted in green for the city parkland. Next slide. This is the revised park dedication exhibit. You can't really see it very well, but it does say 6.6 acres on here. Again, it's been said before, there is no final design of the park, but this just shows you how the space could potentially be used. This is the phasing plan at this time. Everything highlighted in green is the first phase that we're discussing tonight. And then the second phase is highlighted in yellow, both on the Van Blaricom property and the Schober piece in the bottom corner. And then the pink area is the final phase for phase 3. So this is just the final plat images for Bellwether 6th Edition and the final plat image for Amberley. So staff finds that the plans submitted are consistent with our comprehensive plan, our zoning ordinance, our subdivision ordinance, and the preliminary approvals. Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously of the final PUD. And of course, the City Council is the only one that needs to vote for the final plat. So we recommend moving forward with adopting Resolution 2021-115 for the final PUD and Resolution 2021-116 approving the final plat. Thank you.
Thanks. Any questions for Natalie?
Mr. Mayor, yes.
Go right ahead.
The only real thing I have is, if you can go back to the water tower, that page right there, it says play field. In past conversations over, before I got here and such, that conversation was, that is going to be more open space, not a ball field, not anything, no lights, no nothing. I just, when I've looked back at park meetings and stuff like that, or are we still in a design of what that would be?
Sure. Grab it. So Mayor and Council, it's a little bit different with this one. Our parks plan actually shows a neighborhood park transitioning into an open space park. So it's really an active park transitioning to a passive park. But to that effect, no, the details have not been defined. I think this was the applicant showing, that a playfield could fit there if you so. So we had them kind of go through what could fit there before we
Okay.
looked what the park size would be.
Biggest recommendation from me is I don't think it fits to be lit at all and such, so if that can be thought of.
Yeah, I mean, the Parks and Trails Commission, along with the full council, will be involved as any park planning
Okay.
going forward. I'm probably certain there'd be some light source somewhere. There's likely a parking lot somewhere in this area.
I understand that,
Lights
but
that way.
to light the field, to light that, I don't think it would fit into this neighborhood to be a lit open space.
Sure.
Just with my past experiences of things that have happened, so. If we are gonna light it, we need to put the light standards up right now, so everybody knows. That's all I have, thank you.
Thanks. Anything else? Anyone else?
I've got a quick point if I could make it.
Go for it.
So for anybody who was listening in to the earlier discussion about the water planning, so we're looking at putting some water infrastructure potentially in this park area. I just wanted to raise a point that I think I made when we first looked at the preliminary approval, that the park is a little bit undersized compared to what the comp plan calls for. We're beyond the point where that can be modified now. But I just want to raise to the council's attention the community parks that we've created so far in both Ravinia and now Amberley and Bellwether are at the low end or below the lower end of what we say we want in the comp plan. As future developments come in, we probably want to be more conscious of that and try to allocate something closer to the midpoint or to the high end, so we end up averaging where we wanted in the comp plan to end up. Again, we can't change this one at this point. We're past the point where that can be negotiated, but we will have other development opportunities. We probably need to start looking at whether those park spaces are adequate as they're submitted, and maybe push back a little bit as those come in the future.
And I know that's something that Tom and Sharon on Parks and Trails have been on top of and kind of drafted a suggested policy the city should be doing, and I know they have a lot of the same thoughts and are the experts in that type of stuff, so, but I agree with it's something to keep in mind for us.
Did we take fee in lieu of park dedication in this?
Mayor, council, the park is enough to cover what would have been required for this phase, and there's a little bit left over for a future phase, but we do expect cash in lieu of in additional phases coming, but this phase, there's no cash.
Okay.
The previous packet indicates it's about $250,000 will be coming in at a future phase.
Gotcha.
Well, but when you factor all phases in together,
There will be.
That's to Councilmember Nichols' point, I think that's the full package worth.
okay. So yeah, to your point, we need to really think about that if that's what we want to go down. And, developers use these trails too to offset, and some of these trails, if you ask me, are no more glorified than sidewalks when you put them alongside boulevards. In fact, they're probably worse because they pass the maintenance off to the city when you turn them into a trail. But yeah, good point.
Anything else?
There's no snowmobile trail like I asked for.
You have one request. All right. Then
Can we
I-
turn it down based on no snowmobile trail?
Oh, well, I mean,
Try.
to Three Rivers' point, they're committed to making sure there's some portions of their trail and hopefully connected to others as far as snowmobile activity. But, you know, I don't know if you'd want to have a snowmobile trail going through a neighborhood like this anyway, I guess, in my mind.
I don't live there.
But you're elected to
I'm
represent
just
them.
kidding. I'm just kidding.
Come on, John, use
I get
road
it.
like you usually do. Just tear down it when there's enough snow and
Let's go.
All right, well, despite the snowmobile or lack of snowmobile trail, I'll entertain a motion. Can we do both of these in one?
You certainly can.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt Resolution 2021-115, approving the final PUD development plan, and Resolution 2021-116, approving the final plat and development contract.
So moved. Second.
You pick.
Figure that out.
Any further discussion?
BS.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. All righty, on to 9B, zoning amendment for assembly uses.
This will be Natalie again.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So this item, we are looking to bring back the discussion of the zoning amendment for assembly uses in our urban low and medium density residential districts. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on 2 potential options and how we can further regulate these uses. And now staff is looking for direction as to which option we should move forward through the zoning ordinance amendment process, a final decision in terms of what is preferred. Next slide. So option 1, basically places of assembly and worship and educational facilities are proposed to be removed from RSF 1, RSF 2, RSF 3, and RMF 1. Additionally, this option proposes to remove licensed residential facilities serving 7 to 16 residents, and staff does believe it is within the city's authority to do so in RSF 1 and RSF 2.
Can I ask a question quick?
Sure.
Didn't we sort of give up one of these options? Wasn't there a consensus amongst council that although we had, I thought there was.
I think Natalie will get there in the presentation. I think through the Planning Commission, there seemed to be a consensus.
Yeah, the direction that I was provided was to hold a hearing on both of the options.
Okay, fair enough.
But the benefit of option 1 is if the council finds these assembly uses are not compatible with residential districts, this is a straightforward approach. Some considerations to keep in mind is the risk of RLUIPA claims, and some way to kind of consider that is looking at the available vacant land in the immediate and long-term future for assembly uses, specifically places of worship. Other considerations include tax base implications, availability of nearby community services, and the possibility of places of worship concentrating in rural residential district, and potential loss of discretion and flexibility from the city's standpoint. Next slide. Option 2 looks at performance standards added to our conditional use permit process by keeping these uses in residential districts. Staff has vetted 8 performance standards at this time, including a sliding setback of 50 to 200 feet, maximum building height of 35 feet, maximum impervious surface of 50%, a landscaping zone within the setback on property lines abutting residential properties, parking lot screening and landscaping specifically for the parking lot, and then site access from a major road or major collectors and minor collectors that are within 1,000 feet from a major road. Exterior bells and loudspeakers would be limited to 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then we also have kind of a catch-all for the 8th standard for additional requirements that makes it clear council can attach additional conditions based on a specific proposal. The use needs to comply with our traditional CUP standards already in city code. And then per the Planning Commission's recommendation, we added a safe harbor provision, which just makes it clear the city can decide to waive a specific provision in place should we find, for whatever reason, that it does place a substantial burden on a place of worship. The benefit of option 2 is the city retains flexibility and discretion while possibly avoiding unintended consequences of completely removing these uses from our urban, lower-density residential districts. Some considerations: the city will want a clear record to point to for the reasoning of adopting each performance standard. And this option also does not guarantee complete removal of RLUIPA-related risks. So that'll be something the council will have to weigh with both options. And also, this option does not propose any changes to residential licensed facilities for 7 to 16 residents at this time. So the Planning Commission unanimously recommended proceeding with and refining the standards for option 2. The city council should direct staff on whether to proceed with a zoning ordinance amendment based on option 1 or option 2. At the Planning Commission meeting on October 7th, it was discussed that the final zoning ordinance amendment language would be returned to Planning Commission for a public hearing. This could be scheduled as soon as December 2nd if a decision is made by the city council tonight, which would still allow us to get this adopted before January 1st of next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Natalie?
Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you. I mean, John, kind of to your point, I thought we were trending in the direction of having the choice on the performance standard route from previous conversations. And I know that's what the Planning Commission came to. That's what I would be in favor of. But I'll open it up to you guys, what your thoughts are, if we want to proceed forward with that route or the other one, and then hopefully get that scheduled for,
December.
yeah, December.
Motion to proceed with option 2.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And on to 9C.
Back to the Natalie Show.
Instruction, yeah, instruction hours update.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a continuation of a discussion we had earlier this year where staff was directed to reduce our construction hours in the city from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, 8 to 4 on weekends and holidays. However, staff was also directed to include a caveat that provides additional flexibility for individual property owners completing their own projects, as well as contractors completing weather-related repairs. Next slide. So basically, it was one of the easier zoning ordinance amendment languages I've had to do. We just basically delete everything related to our old hours. I did specifically add idling of equipment, as that is a common complaint that we receive as a way sometimes developers and contractors get around our construction hours, is to set up the equipment early and just idle it for a bit. So this would make that specifically an excluded activity before our allowed hours. We do have that caveat for individual property owners completing their own work, as well as contractors doing weather-related work. The only feasible way that staff was able to get this to work was by having this approved as part of a building permit process in terms of the logistics to be able to enforce this and to have the police go out to a property and be able to see that they are indeed in violation.
Uh-oh.
Perfect. So I did we did make one change since this went out to the packet. We thought, the previous, I'm so sorry. The packet said that the effective date would be in full force upon adoption of the resolution tonight. We do think from staff, after further discussion, there is a need to provide ample notification to our development community as well as the public as large. And we do need additional time to work out enforcement logistics. So now we are proposing that if it is adopted tonight, it be effective as of January 1st. Next slide, sorry.
Is there more? Sorry.
So basically, if we are ready to move forward with this, we are recommending to move to adopt the ordinance for amending Chapter 82 the resolution 2021-122 for findings of fact, and then the summary ordinance for summary publication, and that one does require a 4/5 majority vote. Thank you.
Thanks.
It's okay.
Any questions about it? No, Alan, this was something you brought up initially, and
Yeah.
you know, you had some thoughts on.
Yeah, so, I guess I have a couple questions here when I read this, and I understand staff's concern about how to enforce and tying it to a building permit. So, there's lots of things that people do to their homes that don't require building permits. So, if we're tying it to a building permit, are we saying that people can't still work on their homes on those activities that don't require building permits?
It would be limited, okay, so there's two aspects to that, Mayor and Council. So it would be limited to 8 to 4, but we do have another catch-all that additional waives to anything in this nuisance chapter, including like outdoor speakers can be waived per city administrator. So they would just need to let us know that that's something they'd want to do, or if they want to avoid that, they would just do it between 8 to 4. The concern is that there would be hostile interactions if the police is going over to a individual property owner, demanding for them to prove that they are the individual property owner.
Yeah, I understand that, but here's my example. So I'm painting my own house. Is that considered construction activity?
That doesn't, so other equipment or tools, the use of which is attended by loud or unusual noise. Painting, I don't think is going to be anything that would,
So if I'm using
Have your neighbor
a
call.
sprayer, or I'm
Pneumatic sprayer.
restaining my deck, or doing something outside on my house that doesn't require a building permit, am I allowed to work beyond the stated hours? Or am I gonna get in an argument about what constitutes a construction activity and what requires a building permit? Because I'm not gonna stop if I'm in the middle of painting my house. I can tell you, I painted my house a year ago, and I painted right up till dark.
I think just to jump in, I mean, the paintbrush doesn't create noise. So I'm trying to envision I guess if you're shooting a powered paintball to paint your house maybe, or something of
No,
that
I
effect.
used a airless paint gun. I
Right.
used that.
What it comes down to is just, at some point, we have to draw a line of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and we can't have different rules for essentially everybody. So this is the best attempt at trying to find what works. What it comes down to really is complaint base. If your neighbor were to complain of you having some loud noise, an officer would show up and they kind of see whether there is a potential noise issue or not. At the very least, they'd make you aware that, hey, there's been a complaint, there's some noise going on, just so you know, change your behavior. That's how that would be handled.
What about other activities, though, that don't require a building permit? Like I had my driveway redone.
That would not be allowed. If you were complained on, and the officer would come out there, they would educate you that that's an activity that's not allowed outside of those hours.
So the construction company they would stop at 4 o'clock or whatever the time is, stop laying asphalt in the middle of my driveway.
I would say practically, they would have a conversation, and they would say.
But you know
"We
what,
gotta-"
you're getting,
What I'm getting at is, they have a conversation. If the cops come out there and it's 4 o'clock and there's a half an hour left to get the project done, I think the officer would say, get the project done as quickly and quietly as possible and get out of here. I mean, Matt, is that a fair representation of how an officer would act?
Yeah, I mean, I think we approach all of this from an educate first standpoint if we can. You know, we try that with most of our interactions with our public, and this was, you know, we've had conversations at length as what's the appropriate level for law enforcement involvement and not involvement. I think this was the clearer route for, we're never gonna cover all of our circumstances. What have we look back and say anecdotally, what have we seen for issues over the past several years? And we've, you know, had the equipment idling or construction starting. So much of it is, you know, we get out there and it's subcontractors and you know, you have a 15-year-old kid breaking up concrete. You know, we're not gonna, his boss told him to be out there. He has no idea what our city ordinance is, who's working for somebody else. And you follow that line up, that our enforcement is limited to those that are violating the law. So we always try and take the educational approach as much as possible. Now, if there becomes points where there's impact or enforcement is the best way to achieve what we need to in the neighborhood, that's when we'll take that action. But it's really hard to envision every scenario, and I think we practically tried to look at doing more than what we were doing, but in a way that's still sustainable for our officers. Because I think we listened to specifically what the concerns were at the last meeting, and what I didn't want to happen was, our officers receive a complaint and then have to verify, I need to see your ID to show that you live here. Okay, you have a different standard than somebody who doesn't. And I didn't want to start from a position of people having to prove their ability to work on their home, and really wanted to start from the position that we're going to assume it's right, but we're still going to check into it and make sure everything is happening the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how it's written. If I'm somebody working on my house, how do I go about making sure I can continue to work on my house in the evening and still be in compliance? You know what I mean?
I think the language is intended to exclude any activity that isn't loud. So if it's a quiet home project, this wouldn't apply. I think Meredith had something as a comment on Zoom. She might, as a commission liaison, want to contribute something here.
Sure.
I was just noting that usually when you pull a permit for work, the city's hours in which the work can take place are on the permit, and that should be posted on the property. I know that the discussion is about work that you may not necessarily pull a permit for, but I know Alan mentioned, what if I had a general contractor working on my driveway? It's absolutely up to the general contractor when they pull a permit or when they do work in the city to understand what hours they can work in, so that if the police turn up and say, look, you're working outside of the hours, it's really up to them, as in the general contractor, to have found out what those hours are that they can work in. And so the work shouldn't be half finished and now I've got to walk away kind of situation.
All right, so we're basically leaving it down to the subjective of the enforcement officer, what's loud and unusual, really.
Yeah,
And the
our
complaint.
officers are faced with that, with loud music complaints, with, on
Yeah.
a number of levels, and if they're determined that it's loud and intrusive, the hours are a restriction, and if a person is roofing their own home or fixing their deck, say, that they, to a degree that didn't require a permit, but they're doing it outside of those hours, they would probably be asked to stop by the officer because it's loud, intrusive, and they don't have an authorization to work outside of those hours.
Yeah, I guess, I'm fine moving forward with it, just on the spirit, but I'd like to see where it comes to at some point, because I'm sure we're gonna get some feedback on it.
Okay. Maybe we set something in the future just for a review of it, just to see if it's caused any issues.
Yeah.
You're gonna have the exact same conversation in 2 weeks or whatever, when Matt brings the firearms ordinance and what's loud and intrusive and whatever. It's gonna have the same kind of stuff in it, just FYI. Just something to think about.
I haven't seen the
The
wording for
discretion.
that,
I haven't
so.
either, but it's gonna be, based on the conversations. it's
No,
gonna
I'm
be
just,
simple.
I think of all the cases where people come home, and they're rushing to get stuff done on their house in the evening because they don't have time to do it on the weekends or whatnot, so. Yeah, I'd be all for reviewing it come next August 1st and see where we sit.
Why not? That works for me. Just put something tentatively on the schedule for some sort of annual review of it. Okay. Anything else?
And I'm not saying necessarily the language, I'm just saying,
Of how it's working in practice?
see what type of complaints we have with it and what type of enforcement we have to deal with it.
Perfect.
But I think the spirit of it to deal with the biggest offenders, the national builders and those people doing large developments in our community, I think this addresses a lot of that.
Mayor and Council, add Natalie did reach out to each of the 3 major developers in the city, letting them know this would be on the agenda, and did not get a single comment back from them. So we went above and beyond and let them know that this was on the discussion, that we didn't even have to do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
What's the bite for a violation?
Matt?
I believe the first one is typically a misdemeanor unless otherwise stated. I think, to your point where you're gonna, I think the rub is gonna be exactly as you stated with the do-it-yourselfers, and if, people are having to rent equipment, on weekends, that's, if you have to stop using a Bobcat at 4 PM that you rented for the weekend, that's gonna hurt, or a paint sprayer, or take your pick, but.
Maybe educationally, it'd help to have something on the website, maybe included in the next newsletter, just, note
Absolutely.
this is changing.
Absolutely.
All right. John, did you have something you were gonna?
Well, why am I thinking that if you rent your own, are we having the choice of two? Doesn't it say if you're working on your own project, you get extended hours?
Mayor, council, yes, so basically, if a property owner submits a permit, usually it's the contractor that submits for the
Oh,
permit.
so the delineation is the permit issue?
Right.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of stuff you
Yeah,
can,
yeah,
you don't
yeah.
need a permit.
So yeah, then the other option would be for someone who, especially if they're doing an extended project that's gonna take them a few weeks, would be to speak with the city, and then the city administrator can grant them additional hours as well. We just need some kind of documentation so that it's much easier to prove that they are within their right to do so.
I'm sorry.
No.
I'm just chewing on things. This is nuisance ordinances, and then we've got noise ordinances, right? And then the direction I'm going is snow removal. Somebody starts up their snow blower at 5 AM to clear their snow before they leave for work. Is that a whole different thing, or is that?
That is not addressed in this ordinance
Okay.
change. This would be specifically construction equipment. I wouldn't say
Okay.
snow removal is a construction equipment. And for the record, noise nuisance, this is all part of the noise nuisance chapter, so it is,
Okay.
yeah.
I think it's addressed in code already.
Lawnmowers are, I don't know if snow.
Snow removal, I think is.
I was gonna check real quick.
May I ask, you made a comment about contacting city administrator and asking for extended hours. And I know you've done that we've done that with Lennar with some street work stuff in the past. What's the criteria in discretion? And I mean, I guess we really should be we don't need to talk to you about it, but you can give us your opinion because.
I mean, it comes down to common sense in politics, really. For example, for, MI Homes, for example, they wanted hours, and I had the contacts of, the Foys and the Lyman Good and, everything else, and I sent something out to get, a take on thing, and, you learn over time. But ultimately, it usually comes from Kevin or Nick or Rowdy to me, and then I ask for kind of what are we talking about and why, and then make a decision based upon proving a real need, because there's a want versus need component, certainly. And if you choose to quit work every day at 5 PM and then want to start at 6 AM every morning when you leave an hours the other end, I don't care. You're leaving hours on the table, and that's your choice. If there's some really unique thing where weather's coming and the curb needs to get down, or if there's something unique, then that's more of a call that I'm willing to make.
Okay.
But it's usually someone other than me providing me a recommendation. Then I put the politics hat on a little bit and say, how much flack is the council going to get for this or not, based upon what's the good for, the public.
And I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it's a conversation we're gonna have to have with your successor.
It's not, but the other option is having it so black and white, and you can never write it that way. And so having common sense baked into it is a risk, certainly, and there's issues with that, but I think it's also typically the best way to go. And it's usually city administrator or designee, so it's, if it's something, usually most of them, Natalie and Kevin and Rowdy, are working out and hardly even getting to me. They're making the judgment calls because they're smart and able to do that.
I did find the answer to your question about snow removal. So the ordinance immediately after the construction hours one deals with operation of power implements. And there are limits from 10 PM to 7 AM where you can't use powered equipment except for snow removal equipment, which you can use for,
I'm okay then.
at any time.
Cool.
Good deal.
within 12 hours of the end of a snow event. So you can't just fire it up in the middle of July, but just so.
Hopefully you don't need to. Never know in Minnesota, though.
Unless you deem your properties agricultural,
I'm-
you're growing snow.
That's the other part of it. If it's agriculture, you can also use that equipment.
I'm out in the middle, that was the other thing I was talking or thinking about too, was across the street, putting up silage, the tractor runs all night, he'll shut her down. I don't complain because that's music to my ears, but.
You
Whole
never
different-
will have to
whole
worry
different-
about any of this where you live.
Not for a while, I'll
20
be gone
years.
before it gets to
Yeah.
me, right, Jeff? All right,
Me too.
cool.
All right.
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
Second.
Just to clarify, is that for all 3 items?
Yeah, there's the 438, the actual ordinance amendment, resolution 2021-122, approving the findings of fact and the summary publication.
Yeah.
I still second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. On to,
I was gonna say special thanks to Natalie for working through a
Well done.
coffee spill at the same
Yes.
time.
yeah, that was
That's the
impressive.
first time I've ever seen uninterrupted presentation that's
We're
just
gonna have to call
cool.
FEMA.
to apologize, though. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm so thrown off.
Sorry.
Very good.
Unfinished business, 10A, we have another public comment opportunity, and that is for the Planning Commission appointment.
Perfect, thank you. Anyone joining us virtually, if you'd like to comment, you can do so by pressing *9 if you're on the phone. Otherwise, if you're on a computer or tablet, you can press the reactions button and raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. Mayor, at this time, we don't have anyone who submitted public comment cards for this section, and no one is currently raising their hand.
All righty, thank you. Well, I'll just kind of give a brief overview of what the process was and say a few things, and then Jeremy, if you want to do the honors on the nomination that we came to after good, long discussion the other night. We had 6 applicants that narrowed down. One had to withdraw due to the time commitment right now, but is interested in applying in the future. We went with 4 candidates for about 45 minutes each, and then kind of ran through a few exercises with them and just your standard interview questions. And then Jeremy, Dean Jacobs, and I all met and talked, and after a while, selected a nominee. We actually have one of the candidates who was nice enough to sit here through the whole meeting today, so we appreciate that, Stas. But yeah, Jeremy, go right ahead.
Yeah, all the candidates that we talked to were very impressive, and we try to give them a practical example of a development and see what their thoughts on it were, any comments or reservations they might have, suggestions for council. And I was really impressed by the level of research that most of them did. They went out to look at the site, they looked at the OS&P ordinance, they read through code. They all admitted that there was a lot to learn in the position, which is certainly true, but everybody had really good thoughts and comments. I took 4 pages of notes on those conversations, so we had a really good, detailed discussion. And it was really hard to pick which one of the excellent candidates that we were able to talk to select. So the mayor and I and the chair of the commission, Dean Jacobs, had a conversation yesterday for about an hour trying to weigh the pros and cons of the different candidates. And we ended up with a consensus on Corinne Brummond as our first selection. She's got a pretty strong quality background. She's had a lot of work in Maple Grove and other cities doing committee work and even lobbying state government for certain things. And we felt like with her perspective, having a long time service background and working in a suburban community and then moving into the rural portion of Corcoran, she'll be able to represent both sets of interests in the city really well. So that was our consensus for the nomination.
Well said.
She's obviously not here in person.
She is not.
She's not, I don't know if she's
She is
on.
not, and I do not believe she is joining us virtually either.
Okay. Gotcha.
Is she aware that she's your favorite candidate?
We didn't tell them that they were our favorites or not our favorites during the interviews because we hadn't discussed it as a group at that point, and we didn't circle back with them to
And we had our conversation about
24 hours
3
ago.
hours ago, 22 hours ago, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, thoughts, concerns, questions?
She was the first to apply, wasn't she?
Well, she didn't apply the last time around, I guess, so it depends if you count the previous
Yeah.
application rules.
I think, yeah.
So we kept the other applications on file, and then those are here?
Yeah, Michael had to withdraw due to a work commitment right now, but he is interested in the future as well, so.
And we also made clear to each of the applicants that this is only a 4-month term.
Yep.
Given how much time was remaining on former Commissioner Baron-Camp's appointment. So
Yeah, the
we,
term runs.
depending upon how those 4 months go, either the candidate or the council might decide time for a change. And we'll have to play that by ear when the time comes.
Well, I'll just say 4 months, you're not gonna learn that very much in planning when it comes to it, so.
Isn't each meeting like 4 months long?
Well, I can tell you, one of the years I was on it, I think we only had like 4 or 5 meetings the whole year, because there just wasn't that much coming through. But
Days have changed.
I was gonna say.
I would encourage her,
That happening.
I would encourage her, if she's the choice of the council, to stick it beyond 4 months. So, I'm fine with it.
Okay. You wanna make a motion?
I move to appoint Corinne Bremen.
Second.
Any further discussion?
If I may,
Yeah, absolutely.
I met Corinne at my neighborhood party.
Nice.
And there was about an hour and a half that I forgot we had a party going on because of her love and passion about what's going on in whatever community she's in and those kind of things. She is a military wife and very devoted, has a great family, those kind of things. And I encouraged her to apply for this when I was walking away and coming here. So I didn't jump in. I knew she would be a good fit. And even though she's not here, I know what she's got going on this evening, so I know
Gotcha.
what's going on. So I know if she is appointed, which it sounds like we're there, she's gonna make it something more than, and we will get challenges from her.
Good.
She will be very outgoing, as you guys have already witnessed, so, cool.
Glad to hear
That's all
it.
I have to say.
And I just want to say too, thank you so much for your application
Yes.
to the other candidates, and I hope you continue to come and to apply, because we'd love to get all of you on commission as they open up. So again, I've said it before, it's a good problem to have too many good candidates, so
Yes.
we'll take that.
What is this, may I ask your name? Oh, okay, thank you.
All right, do we have a motion and a second? And that was it for the discussion, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
On to, oops, hit the mic. 11A, new business, we have another public comment opportunity for items 10A, B, C, and D.
Perfect. Thank you, Mayor. Anyone who's joining us virtually, you can press *9 to raise your hand, or click the reactions button and click raise your hand, and we'll recognize you. This time, no one's raising their hand, and we do not have any public comment cards from the audience.
Okay. And we'll go right into 11A.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. I'll try to quickly go through a fairly complex item, but this started a while back, actually, where the city talked about compensation structure and potentially reviewing a compensation philosophy for the city. And the council started out by really developing a peer group first. So we have 8 peer cities: Carver, Dayton, Medina, Minnetrista, Orono, Rogers, Victoria, and Wayzata. And what we did is we got compensation information from those cities and then compared them, and that data is more thoroughly in the packet. But overall, there were really 2 findings that jumped out. One with the mid to lower graded positions, relatively average, I would say, if you put them all together. And we can talk a little bit further about that, but that's a really simplified statement based upon complexities of compensation, obviously. But there was certainly a gap at the higher graded positions. And really, I met with George Gamak, and George Gamak, back in the day, when he was on council, helped to design the system, and since the 8 years I've been here and before my time, has helped us grade job descriptions and place them. And he does this professionally. It's a true site system. He's hired by big organizations such as Dakota County, Vadnais Heights, all over, Wright County, all over the place. They hire him to do this stuff, and it's his profession. And he's fortunately done it for free for us behind the scenes for my entire time here, saving us quite a bit of funds. But the system they put in place back in the day really had, starting with a system where for every further difficulty, there should be a pay value that goes along with that. But at that time, the projected a pay increase for the top value positions was at a rate that the city really couldn't afford. It's a different city at that time. So what I have here on the slide here is they had an average gap in pay for the first 11 grades of nearly 6% in between them. And then that got narrowed down. So down below 5%, down to 4.4, down below 4% as you get to the top of the grade. And the next slide kind of shows what that is. So on the bottom, you have the difficulty graded positions, and then you have the compensation on the left-hand side. And if you follow that as an arrow, really it should follow this trajectory. But with the lower percentages, it really tailed off. And you could see that how it compared overall with our comparable cities as well. So that was really evident in the data. And so this is, in front of you is really what recommended, what I'm calling a fix to the system to really get the higher level positions where they need to be, where they're fairly paid to their peers. And then there can be a further discussion here. But really, if you look over on the right-hand side, you have what the recommendation changes would be, number of employees. So at the lower level, you're talking pennies per hour until you get up to about grade 12. And then you're talking 50 cents up to $1.60, up to upwards of $8. I have a giant asterisk, however, next to this position, which is me, on grade 20, is that I'm the only position that has been off the pay scale. So the council, over the past several years, has, for whatever reason, recognized and provided additional pay. So my pay actually, where I'm at today, is pretty close to where this would be at. It's actually a 20-cent difference. And I think that really goes to show the accuracy of this trajectory, how it should be fixed moving forward for everybody else. So you can see the number of employees that would be impacted by the changes per the slides there. In addition to the compensation structure comparison, I did want to, this is in the packet, but I wanted to highlight it here as well, because typically the next part of the compensation discussion is, well, that's one part, but benefit, what about benefits? And so I did a comparison as well. You'll notice that Orono's missing here. I didn't get data from them, and it's really just a point of information here. So because cities do it differently, some cities age band, some do not, I made up an employee. So I have a made-up employee that's 40 years old, has a 40-year-old spouse, and 2 kids under 10, and they need family coverage. So that's just, and you could pick any version of this and get different data, but it's just one data point. And for Corcoran, it's not too far off several of our situations here, so it made sense as well. So you can just see what it costs for those employees to get that coverage. So for Corcoran, the employees paying just over $7,000 for their share of the coverage. A little higher in Carver. Dayton is $800. Medina, it's $2,000. So at some point, it makes a difference. If we're average wage and average compared to Dayton, Medina, well, that's $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 difference, and that's several bucks an hour too. So it's just a data point within the overall package that affects the employee's decision-making on where they want to work and choose to go. And then just the PTO or vacation on the bottom there, which I think is, pretty much in line with most organizations where we're at too, but definitely not on the high end. And that's for a 6-year employee. There's always bands that go up and down. So I wanted to just make an example there too. Oftentimes cities have different starting zones for 1, 2, 3, or 5, but usually after 5, there's a pretty substantial, this is where you're at. So I chose 6 years for that reason. So my recommendation at the very least is to update the compensation plan structure for 2022 with what I'm calling the fix. I did plug it in what that would cost. My number pumped out about $66,000. That's everything that comes along with it too. That's para, that's the sorry, the FICA.
Medicare.
Medicare, all those things. I will say, this wage consideration, two of the highest impacted positions are those potential new development superintendent and operations superintendent that are on like grade 16. And this is with them effective January 1, and I still need to change our budget, that there's no way we're starting those positions January 1. We're probably missing a full quarter. So I think this cost is high. And then just, as well as on the next item, actually discuss benefits, we baked in a 10% health insurance increase for the budget, and it actually came in a tiny bit lower than this year's health insurance costs. So we essentially do not have a 10% increase in health insurance that would eat a significant portion of this as well. And you might have a little time without an employee to help have some savings too. So really at this point, looking for a motion on how to proceed forward. My strong recommendation is to direct staff to proceed with these specific pay plan amendments for the next version of the budget I bring to you. And then really, it's whether or not the council wants to have a further discussion on the direction for the pay plan as well. Is average where you want to be as an organization? Is the cost of benefits where you want to see? And those are directions that we could take moving forward either this year or years moving forward as well. So I'll stop there and answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Any questions for Brad on the compensation plan itself, the proposed one?
Can I ask a question about the graph that you showed in comparison to other cities? The employee responsibility for deductible, is that, I understand the city contributes a portion to each employee's HSA to cover a portion of that deductible, so is this number net of the cities, or is this gross?
This is net for the employee. So we have a 6,000 deductible.
For a family.
For family, and the city puts in 3,000, so the employee has a 3,000 cap. That's how I came to this. So
Okay.
for Medina, gosh, I think it's a 5,000 deductible, and the city pays 3, so that's how I got to the 2 gap for Medina. And I have notes to back up all these. How
No,
I
that's
got-
fine.
How I got to everything. Because I figured I'd forget by the time I had to present it to the council.
Well, can I ask a general question, not of Brad?
Sure.
I know that Brad has been asking for a compensation structure and philosophy for like all of my years on council. And so it's disappointing that we get one and Brad's going to be gone in a month. It's kind of like when, I love sports analogies, but it's like when they hire a new head coach and then hire a new general manager, and the general manager comes in and says, well, that's not my guy, so I'm gonna fire that person. And it seems like, basically, if you look at city government as an organization or an entity, just like any other entity, we're hiring the CEO of our town. We're the board of directors, we're hiring the CEO of our town. And I think one thing that would be attractive potentially, or at least within the purview of the new person, is a compensation structure. So I almost think like we should, at least in the process of finding a new person, say to them as part of that interview, say we paused on our compensation structure so you can have one of the things that you'll be able to do is help in attracting new talent by helping design the compensation structure. So I would almost rather not, this is a significant piece, I'd rather not legislate a significant piece without the person that's going to be in charge of the directive of it. So I would say that this is good to have, it's good to know. Probably 5 years too late for Brad. It's just in time for the new person. And I think I would, if there's a motion to do nothing and have this be one of the first conversations of the new person who leads our organization, at least we'll come ready for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying makes sense. I guess the big question would be, what's the timing of that going to be? And we don't really know that right now.
We'll find that out in 15 minutes or so.
Well, we might theoretically.
No, I know, I'm totally joking. I'd hate to make a decision in front of that call. I,
Well, the only bad part about making a decision is if he would come back and say, you overshot with this one.
Right.
You know, we can always move forward with this and then put that on the new person to come up with something even more attractive.
Kind of to Brad's point of the, there's this proposed change, and then if there's further things we wanted to look at, maybe those further things is what we can say to the new person, if we want to review because like what you just said, unless would be a less of an increase that they'd want, it wouldn't hurt to do this increase if it's something we want, and then have them come up with whatever philosophy or structure on top of that they want.
new person comes in and they get a big win in that the council just approved increases in the wage and salary structure for the whole.
Gotcha, yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that too.
I'll play the devil's advocate of that side, though.
Good.
What's it say to staff if we table this? I'm thinking as a staff member, well, what if this guy takes 9 months to a year to come up with something? And maybe he's gonna come up with something that isn't as good. I'd rather have the win, the small win now and hope for another win later versus taking no win at this point. But in the end, I mean, compensation does not retain people long-term. It's the whole atmosphere, He moved on. I don't think you moved on for additional compensation. I think you moved on for opportunity. So.
Well, there's a wage and benefit component, right?
Yeah.
So we take a little bit of the flexibility of whatever they might say, well, in my experience, we want to have these benefits be increased more, and the salary component, let's really emphasize the benefits, or whatever. My wife is in pay and benefits. She'll be able to go 1,000 different directions with this, and it is a big tool. The benefits and the salary of the organization is a giant tool for the leader. And I think that we would back that person in we're going to hire them, her. We're going to back that person. So saying we want the flexibility of the new leader, because it's not like then we'll get that win that you're talking about. I don't know. I think people, I guess I don't, I think I've said what I needed to say about it. I like the devil's advocate stuff. I think we still win if we just back the new person and what they have to say.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
One thing that I see in the presentation, we're not relying on Brad's conjecture or opinion to set the numbers. It's really based on, comparable city data. I don't know that a new person will give a different data set. I think if we're going to be true to how we started this effort, where staff told us we have a hard time finding and retaining high-quality people, and we fear our high-quality people are going to leave for more pay, that risk only goes up when you lose your administrator, because they don't know who's going to come in and fill that spot, and the impact to the culture that would have. So, to me, I see Brad's departure as a huge red flag that we need to do this immediately to try to secure that high-quality talent that he's put together.
Yeah, I get your point, but the next guy could come in and say, this is a great idea. I don't get anything better. But I'd rather have this done and then challenge him with something else.
Yeah,
Personally.
I think I agree, and I think kind of like what I was saying before, that the additional stuff that could be added to this, or that a new administrator could want to do. They have some big idea, we're going to be all ears about it, and that can be their first thing to tackle, I'm sure, if they want to. So yeah, I agree with what I get what you were saying. I think I tend to agree with what you're kind of saying, Alan, on.
Yeah, I'd rather have him come in and win over staff by the things he's doing versus, hey, I just gave you $5 more in your
Yeah.
pocket.
Yeah.
Because that $5 would have happened 3 months before
Right.
or whatever, you know?
All right,
That makes sense.
I think those are fair points.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and really tighten this down to as simple as possible. Where does this scale put Corcoran to neighboring communities? Are we at the average? Are we slightly above average? I think I heard somebody talking about that at some point this evening and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the data's in there. The hardest part, I would say, is every position is just a little different.
Just
So you
a bit
really
off.
have to look at the trend points, and I would
Yep.
say the trend points is its average.
Okay,
And that's where this would be, and to the point, I think there's great points made. I think at the very least, it gives fair compensation to those doing the hardest work, getting the same pennies for the grade of difficulty, and I think that's a fair thing to do no matter what. I think to Councilman Nichols' point, I think the worst thing that could happen right now is losing somebody else down this line. And, this is a fair fix to, that, again, I don't think it's overpaying a darn person. It's getting the high end up to probably where I should have pushed a lot harder a couple of years ago, and shame on me.
again, Counselor Bottom spoke highly too, or spoke about it's taken 8 years to get to this point. I'd rather not wait any longer. I think this is a reasonable thing to set our bar going forward, and the new person coming in, we would support the same type of analysis and stuff if they feel there's more needed.
Right.
So I imagine, Brad, going into an organization, taking this job, if the council already agreed to a higher compensation agreement, that probably makes the job more attractive. So I guess,
Correct. I mean,
think it
if
hurts,
you're going to
yeah.
recruitment
So-
right now with a starting wage of 48 versus 58, that's a different person that's going to apply for this job. And
I
same
get it.
thing on the top.
Makes sense.
I think it's probably the best time, I mean, other than, it's like planting a tree, the best time a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time's now. Kind of similar with the compensation, I guess.
Fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then I'll go ahead and make a motion to direct staff to proceed with the pay plan amendments as recommended.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. 10B, the 2022 benefits summary.
Apologize, I ruined Jessica's surprise a little bit already. so.
Thank you. Well, Mayor and Council, we went through the benefits renewal with our benefits broker, and we received a really favorable increase. I would note that it does say that there's a 3.63% increase. Part of that is due to the way that we composite rates, and that's why our city contribution's a little different. Each year we have, because we're a small group employer, we have to age band, they age band our people for us in an attempt to ensure that we're equitable to people of all ages in our organization. We create a composite rate, and then we use that composite rate to help understand what the city's contribution is. So we've had some changes on the staff level, which has impacted our overall contribution in that composite rate. So overall benefits, the cost of benefits has gone up a little bit. The change in our composite rate makes our city contribution slightly lower, which will have zero impact. It will reduce our proposed budget impact because we have been looking at a 10% increase. So we will be able to add that back into the budget, but we would like to propose continuing with the same benefits program that we currently have. We've had really good luck with Health Partners. Some of the other providers did provide some different options for us, but some of those had higher deductibles and a few other things that made them less attractive to maintain our current provider. We do offer a pretty broad network for our team to be able to access things like Mayo and Children's Hospital. So we like to have as broad as we could with that, and that's a little bit of history on our health plan. Our dental rates stayed consistent, as well as our life insurance has stayed consistent with just a new provider this year. So we'd be proposing the same benefits that we've had generally. So with that, I'd pause for any questions and ask that we move ahead with our benefits summary as presented and proceed with open enrollment on Monday.
Sounds good, thank you. Any questions for Jessica? Nope, straightforward.
Congratulations on negotiating an increase that's lower than the CPI.
I was very happy about the rates. We weren't sure with how COVID would impact things. So we're very, very happy about that. And each year it's a little, until we get to 50 employees, it's a little hard to know where we're going to end up with our composite rate as well as the increase, because it's all based on the age of your employees. So we do try to budget and understand that there could be changes throughout the year that people need to, might have life changes, so we try to include that in the budget as well.
So if we turn this down, open enrollment on Monday is not gonna.
I would ask that we please do something. If we don't want to do health partners, we could look at another option. But we would like to proceed with.
Yeah. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
11C, scheduling work session for the urban conservation ordinance.
Mayor and Council, on my last council meeting night, I'd like to work as long as possible, so if you'd please schedule a work session at 5:30 PM to discuss more items, that'd be great.
Or does that work for everyone?
Maybe we should move it to 4 if that's what he wants.
I regret that statement.
4:05, it'll take me 5 minutes to get here.
All right, then I'll go ahead and let's go ahead and schedule the work session for 5:30 PM, November 22nd, 2021, for the urban conservation ordinance.
May I ask a question before are there gonna be other things that come up that are gonna trump this as we move to a different, in this process of finding a new city administrator? Are we gonna need to have sessions that are gonna be more important than this one?
Potentially, and we can, I don't know if anything will happen necessarily by then in terms of that.
So we just schedule and then maybe are open to maybe.
Yeah.
Just Mayor and
We have
Council,
to
that
post
point,
it.
it really depends on how you want to look at it. There could be certain things, the generous part of getting these items done is the sooner these items are knocked out and done, it's no longer for discussion items to work on. So that's the other side of that, knocking these planning items out in really November and December would assist with that, so.
But also, what's the notice requirement on a work session?
Notice requirement is 4 days. The day that you call it does not count, but the day of the meeting.
Of it does. Gotcha. So I mean, if something, really important came up the prior week, we could always.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. Then on to 11D, a big item, city administrator recruitment process.
Mayor and Council, I'll be brief. I've obviously kept you in the loop with everything going on here, but there will be a needed process to replace my position here with the city. My last day will be earlier on Thanksgiving at the time per my resignation notice in front of you. As the only action item that I do recommend actually is a motion to accept that resignation. And unless you want to keep paying me, I guess you can do that as well. But also, staff would need some pretty significant direction on how to move forward. As you all know, we're extremely busy. I'd like to think I add some value to the organization. And being down a person is going to be a challenge. There's several different ways to approach. Obviously, we have a bench here of talent that could potentially move in or at least accommodate, or there is the potential for a full-on search and seeing what that goes with. That's the really discussion tonight. I'm happy to provide any information on my experiences or recommendations, but I guess my one recommendation is as clear as possible, as quick as possible with what type of process you want to do. So that can be messaged, and then also with the remaining team, figuring out how to implement what you've decided on doing, because the work doesn't stop. I'll just stop there.
Well, should we start with the resignation? Just get that out of the way and then do none of that. So
I move to accept the resignation.
I'll second it. Any discussion on that?
Do you have my copy?
I might have a copy.
Alan hasn't read it yet. Give him a minute.
No, I read it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Then on to the process itself and what we want to do here.
I don't think we need to, but.
Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
What would it take for him to stay? Has anybody asked that yet?
I think that ship has
I think it's-
sailed.
Yeah.
Per code of ethics,
I understand. I had to say it.
say you'll take something, it's against our ethics to go back on that.
I understand.
I suspect if there was something that would have enticed him to stay, he would have said it, and he said that in the past. So anyways,
Had to ask.
yeah.
So thoughts on the process, on how we want to approach this?
I think we have to move forward with some type of professional service.
Oh, okay. Like a recruiter?
Yeah, I don't have the expertise in hiring somebody, and I'm not gonna go out and post it on Facebook, so.
No. I'm a little hesitant on the recruiter personally. I get what you're saying. I'm
What's your apprehension?
just bad experience in business with recruiters, and also some stories I've heard from other cities that have had nightmares with that whole process. It just hasn't worked out well, so it gives me a little bit of hesitation.
I bet Shoreview would say their recruiter did a good job.
Probably.
I wonder if we could, I'm sure they're all flat fee type recruiters versus a compensation structure based upon, you know, the employee, us maintaining employment for X amount of time with the new person.
Mayor, just to interject, Mayor and Council, so you're looking probably around 20 grand all said and done for a full service suite. So that involves meeting with every council member, the department heads, to designing what the attributes you're looking for, the brochure, putting it out there, reviewing initial candidates, weeding out those who just don't make any sense whatsoever, working to select a small, semifinalist group, anywhere from 8 to 12 probably, to set up initial interviews to get through. Usually that's with either a subgroup or the full council, and there's no names. It's candidate 1 roughly has these experiences, and candidate 2 is this, because ultimately, once they're finalists, they're named officially. Then they go through the finalists and assist with anything else, negotiate the contract, and there typically is, if this person doesn't make it a year, do it again for free. And it's, I think about, I said already, about $20,000. And I personally think it's worth every single penny. The only person who's capable in this organization, I'm sorry, Matt, I'll just say it, capable to, and Kevin, sorry, to probably do a full-scale recruitment is this one next to me, who would likely be a potential candidate for that process. So right there, you have a problem. So I'll just add that as well.
My thoughts kind of along those lines is, if we were to be bringing someone in on an interim basis at some level, couldn't we, and I would think of that pool that we'd be looking at for the interim hire, they would have some hiring experience typically, if it's some either retired administrators or whoever's on that list that you've mentioned.
I think if you'd want to go on an interim level, and it's just those who don't know, the League of Minnesota Cities keeps a list of just potential bench candidates. Usually they're retired administrators of who could potentially jump in. But if you wanted to go an interim route, you would develop what attributes you want that person to be and accomplish in the term of how long it's going to be. And if that was important, you would want to certainly highlight that. But one of the top job expectations is to handle a full-scale recruitment process for that position. that would certainly probably reduce who you'd be looking at doing that. And obviously, there's a cost there. You're paying this person some hourly rate, and they would be then, doing that as part of their job.
Right.
So it's a cost.
Yep.
Do you guys agree that this is the most important thing we'll do so far?
In the next month and a half?
No, in my 5 years, I don't think anything will trump this.
No.
As far as the impact of Corcoran. And we spend 20 grand on, I think we spent 20 grand on, when we have a feasibility study for a road, it's 20 grand. When we have the feasibility study for a well location, it's 20 grand. I don't want to balk at that, being it's such an important thing. And I have the philosophy of casting the nets far and wide. So in an important job, in an important hire, an important action, if we spend 20 grand and a recruiter sends us a bunch of putzes, then I guess we don't hire those people. If we've got people in the wings and people that our friends and connections bring us, and we hire those people, I guess we gotta be fair to the people of Corcoran too, and have them know that we did our due diligence on the hire. And I think that if we went outside the box too much, I think people would question the process. So initially, my gut is all of us know people, and we cast those nets out there, and then also have a recruiter, and I think we'll find good candidates. We have to have an interim in the meantime, and I would think we just use Jessica and.
I would agree.
And
We should ask Jessica.
Well, yes, obviously, she's interested.
I would be happy to take that role.
And then I don't know what the timetable on recruiters are, because the recruiters are 6 months out, they're 8 months out, they're.
And I think also timing-wise, it's not ideal because we're going to run into Thanksgiving, then the holidays, and the New Year, so maybe we're not seeing much of anything until into the new year. I don't know.
I don't know, if someone I'm open to that, I don't know. I've had the same job for 25 years, but I've hired.
Right.
And it's like when you want to hire someone, I don't really think about, oh my God, whatever, if people want a new job, they don't.
Right.
I don't know if they care.
Well, you mentioned something to me the other day about just the timing. Was that more on the side of maybe the full range of applicants?
Well, I've had so many conversations, so as far as which conversation that, I think there's a couple different things. One, if there's a holidays thing and if the council really wants to think about this, then it's how long do you want the interim conditions to be? Obviously, you've seen Jessica's technical abilities, that are better than mine. Obviously you have somebody in here who I think desires the seat over here as well. It's not a great seat. You should get a new one if you're there. But if that's an opportunity, then that's something to discuss as well. So I think there's probably 6 different ways the council could go about this. I think if there's one that's you really think makes the most sense, then that's what you got to do. But I think that's why I've had a lot of conversation about this too, and there's a lot of different ways to approach this. So ultimately, I do think it's a significant decision-making point. It's it's the rudder for a lot of things that happen, and sometimes there's a lot of different directions up on the dais here, and it's this person's role to kind of move the millions of dollars of staff time towards what is the right direction. So I think it is important.
I think the public should know that also we as a group have not been able to talk about this until right this second. So although it's been on our mind, we've never been able to interact about it. So I don't, to Brad's point, I don't know if we need to make a decision tonight, do we?
Mr. Mayor?
I don't think specifically on, but
I think that the request in 11D is that we appoint an interim, and sounds like a few of us are of the opinion that it should be Jessica, and it sounds like Jessica is willing, so we should probably take
That I
that
do
action.
think we should figure out tonight, yeah.
I like a lot of what everybody has said. I agree with John's framing that functionally we're acting as a board of directors here, trying to find a new CEO of this organization. I agree with Alan that we have to approach that with a sense of humility, and that we're going to be challenged to figure out what are the characteristics of the person to hire and to tell good from bad, because this isn't our area of specialty, right? I mean, I do quality for medical devices, and John's a financial advisor, and Tom's a construction project manager, and Alan, you're in customer service leadership?
Reinsurance, yeah.
And Dean's got a variety of experiences. Probably the most city government experience of anybody up here in various capacities. But for all of our expertise, we're not specialists in public administration. And we don't know the relationships and the history the way that all of the people at that table do. So I see this as an extremely risky place for the council to be. John, you've said in the past that in a lot of cities, the councils don't get along with the administrators. In many cases, they've picked the administrators that they don't like, which to me is an indication that it's hard to find the right person. And when you look at hiring industry where I have my experience, typically internal processes where you hire somebody from the inside, those people tend to do better than hires from the outside. So I'm not opposed to the idea of a recruitment. I'm a little concerned with the idea that if we make this take a long time, and we have a high-level staff that has been very responsive and gets a lot of good things done quickly and well, those people want to know their future. And if they don't trust us to pick the right person, or they don't think that the person that we think is the right person is going to fit for them, those folks could very well decide to preemptively leave. So I want to try to give them a sense of security and safety as much as possible so we don't lose that high-quality, high-performance team that Brad has put together. So I'm kind of skewing toward how do we make this a short period of time and reduce the risk of losing somebody really good? And how do we as a council come to a level of comfort with our ability to pick a person? I'll pause there.
Well, I agree with John. It's probably going to be the most important decision we make. I mean, Brad's impact is well beyond the 8 years that he's here, right? The staff that he's hired and mentored, hopefully they stick around a lot longer. And the next person will hopefully will have the same impact. I think we owe it to the people in the city to make a good decision and the most informed decision. And maybe an internal candidate is the person that rises above in the whole recruitment process. But I think we owe it to the city to cast as wide a net as possible. Like John said, 20 grand in the scheme of things is a pretty low number when you look at what we spent 20 grand on to do feasibility studies for this or for that, so I'm fine with appointing Jessica as an interim and hiring somebody to look, and it may be that you're the best candidate for the position long-term. But I think we owe it to the people in the city to at least hire someone to help us look.
Gotcha. Okay.
If I may.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brad, reflections on you. I can't speak highly enough of what you've done for us, number one. Number two, my concern is we appoint Jessica as intern, and if we choose somebody else, will she stay? So we got to do that right, because we don't want that. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose any of the other guys, gals. Maybe they'll come forward also. But I really do think in my experiences, I would, yeah, we're the board of directors and stuff, but that group, along with a few other people that aren't here tonight, are the ones that are gonna be working with that person the most. So if I have anything to say, I think I might, but I would like them, if Jessica's the interim and she applies, then she's out. But the rest of them making the decision, taking it down to 2 or 3 candidates, in their opinion, are the best. We would still get the information, kind of like what we did, what you guys did with the planning commission and stuff, and we appointed 3 people to do it.
So you're talking about like the process to get to.
The process to get to finalists are the people that are gonna be working with that person
Yeah, I think they should.
on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we contact Brad whenever we got questions, those kind of things. That's the group that's gonna need to do that. Don't know if they've done hiring and stuff, I think they have. We aren't a big corporation or anything like that, but I think we can get a finalist list out of that group, working with a recruiter. I think that broad net
Gotcha.
thrown out is extremely important. In today's world, my experiences are, there are a lot of people moving, changing, doing things, including myself, trying to find somebody that'll hire a gray-haired 60-year-old guy. But
Macy's.
Macy's, I haven't gotten that call yet, John, but my December is getting quite full. Thank you for that. I respect these guys enough that I think they should whittle it down to the final candidates, and then that's where we step in unless we see something different. And again, whatever we do, I don't know if we can perfect this. I don't want to lose any one of those people on that.
And I think kind of along those same lines, I've seen in some other cities that have gone through this recently where staff has been part of the interview process. I think I've seen it more so when there are finalists and then staff is part of the interview process with those finalists as opposed to picking, but.
Yeah, I'd be more inclined for staff to have input versus picking.
Yeah.
I think we're duly elected to make that decision.
And then I knew you guys would say it right. I
Got the thought out there, that's all.
I want it.
You're doing good.
It's either that or Matt calls the police state and he just takes over and we can go home.
That's the last person I want in charge of this place. I'm just kidding. He's got more ammo than I do. The team that has been built, I have watched and seen over the 14 years I've been here, work very well together. Their opinions are respected by each other. They may not always agree with, just as Brad might not always agree with us, but respects our opinions and those kind of things. I think that consensus is important. I don't think we're in a place where we can lose the experience we have, the growth that we've had with these people that have been here as long as they've been. Right now at the point of where this community is. I don't want to lose anybody.
Yep.
I've already made a statement. What do we do to keep him? We'll talk back later. I won't, but I respect that. But my number one thing is, I absolutely agree with Jessica stepping in and being the intern, but I don't want to lose her through this process. I cherish and value her thoughts and her work ethics and stuff, so.
Yeah, well said. So let me try to summarize and throw something out here. Maybe we direct staff to come up with some of the details on, the recruiter, maybe what the timeline would be for something like that, and get some specific, it sounds like 20 grand is about the pricing, but maybe specific firm and some of those details put together.
If I may, Mayor Council, so I think what would be probably best is to draft a request for proposals that would be sent out to the recruiters.
Yep.
Based upon what services the council wants. And pretty easy to find something. I think we need pretty much wraparound, again, if you want to go this route. And then really, part of their proposal would be the timeline as
Mhm.
well. And that could be part of your criteria. If you have a good, if you shouldn't choose to go that route. If you have a proposer that has a good fee, but they can't do it for 3 months, then maybe you don't choose them.
Right.
But they would have what they could do with their timeline.
Gotcha.
for that.
So, directing staff to do that. Naming Jessica interim city administrator effective the day after you're gone, I suppose?
Well, with the Mayor and Council, what I'd recommend is drafting a resolution.
Yep.
That we could put on a future council meeting.
Yep, I'm just trying to throw out the
Yep.
ideas of it.
Yep, perfect.
We
Are
would-
there any opposition to Jessica becoming that interim person? Anybody knows? I
Come on,
don't mean to
Kevin.
put you on,
Don't put them
Come
on
on.
this.
don't need to put you on the spot, but
I think,
you do it to us every Thursday night. Everyone opposed, everyone approved. It was just, sorry.
I think that Jessica would do a great job in that. I would also say, just knowing how full her plate is now.
Yep.
If you're looking at success in trying, I don't think any person humanly could be possible doing both of those jobs at the same time. So I think that's a consideration, and, having over a decade in the public administration end of government, the recruiters, I've seen some, as you've all said, some really bad outcomes and some good ones, but they're ones that you really get what you pay for. And as applicants look at them, they look at how seriously is the city taking this hire with what they're willing to invest in, who they're using as a recruiter, and what their process looks like. And I would say that who your recruiter is can change your applicant pool, and all the other circumstances around it as far as, interim and what's going on in the city. And I think a big part of it is highlighting the opportunities that, as you guys talked about earlier, how that reflects on the community. And I think we have a lot to offer as a community. I think we're fortunate to have Jessica and hopefully keep Jessica as well. But I think the recruiter that's probably a really, I would, my advice from having been involved in a lot of seeing what other cities are doing and talking with them about it is, there's a right and a wrong way to do it, but I think they're well worth their investment to make sure that you've found all your opportunities.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
There's our advertisement. He just,
Yeah.
recruiters and working for this with this city, this company, whatever, is a good place to be.
There you go.
Good job.
And kind of on a couple of those points that Matt said, we were naming Jessica interim city administrator. I think we should probably be looking at bringing in someone on a temporary basis to handle her current responsibilities, and maybe there's some that need to be looked at that makes sense for Jessica to continue as she's interim administrator, and some that maybe could be delegated to a different employee, if that makes sense. And then some that would be handled by a temporary employee for the time being.
How many people would it take for Jessica to be successful in the interim role? In light of all the other things going on that you're having to manage, given the inefficiencies of handoffs and what somebody coming in cold could practically take on at a time? Is that one person? Is it more than one person?
That is a good question. We've been talking about what that would look like, and I think it depends on what we could get from, who we could get to fill the role. If it would take more than one person, if it's, 3 days a week or 5 days a week, or what that exactly looks like. So understanding really what council is looking for next steps helps kind of shape that, if we're doing a recruitment process or not.
Are they here yet? Are any of them internal?
For
The-
what?
Like who would, like in theory, if you become interim city admin and then like I don't know who's,
Yeah.
if, like, the other people on our team inside that work in, like Michelle or whatever, or any of those people, would they then be
If I could-
qualified to do
Yeah, just,
interim basis stuff?
the hard part is everyone's plate's full. So if they move into doing something else, who's doing their work? So.
You just
whatever-
gotta buy more plates. Or bigger plates.
More plus ones to spin, that's for
Oh,
sure.
sure.
So, I mean, to Jessica's point, that's where the clarity is, if the council wants to think about it for 4, 5, 6 months, that's a whole different setup that has to be made where Jessica be successful. If it's, let's hard and fast knock this out in 3.5 months, that's a different look too.
I think it'd be detrimental for us to drag our feet
So,
if there's candidates out there.
and then too, that's, you know,
Yeah.
Councilor Bottomless point bringing this up, this has been dropping on you all for the first, you know, to talk about it together here tonight too. And one thing by us drafting the RFP to bring back to you would give the council 2 more weeks to think about it before you officially give the go-ahead to go in that direction as well. So I also don't want to, as much as I let off with, we need a decision soon, we also don't want to rush you to the decision you're uncomfortable with either.
And I agree, we don't want to drag our feet on it if we think that the 3.5 months or whatever, you know, timeframe is feasible and that we'll get that wide net that we want. Then I'd say we go for that sort of time period, which I guess would put us, we're almost in November. I mean, that's gonna be a few months into 2022.
February, March.
Yeah. So, is it helpful to put a date on the interim thing and then maybe have a date where we review it and can adjust if we need to make it longer, or we could,
Do you need a sunset on it?
that's what I'm asking.
No, and this, I mean, I think that would be helpful if the council wanted to not do the recruitment until a later date to kind of think for a while longer. And then you'd want to give, for sure, Jessica to know that, okay, I need to build the tools necessary for this amount of time. But if it is just, let's just move towards this position and filling it, I don't think we need a date.
Gotcha.
I would suggest we move for an RFP as quickly as possible, and then RFP timelines, you know, what we get back will tell us what we can decide for the interim period. If somebody's saying it's gonna take you 5 months to find a candidate,
Yeah.
then we can deal with staffing based on that 5 month and do a hire date at the end of that period.
I agree.
Do you need a motion, or is that enough information?
No, I think that's the direction moving forward. So what we do is we would draft the RFP, bring it back to you on November 10th for ideally approval to go out, and then see if there's a potential to swing it back with proposals by the 22nd. That might be tight. But then, of course, you're looking at December 9th. And then you're probably looking the recruiter to take a month to work with the council and department heads to develop the position profile, and then you're posting sometime in January, and likely reviewing applicants and making a decision in February and having them start in March.
Right when the ground starts to unthaw.
Maybe.
Or, yeah, and of course it goes different ways. And if it's internal, then you're filling a different position after that too. So it just depends which way the direction all goes, obviously.
It sounds like we want to,
Yeah.
you know, regardless of if we're in the end going internal or with a candidate through the recruiter, it sounds like we want to go through that process for sure. Right? That's what I'm picking up from the group.
That's what you're hearing.
Okay.
And then should we also discuss a backup person in the interim? Do you need authorization to proceed with finding somebody to be
To fill in.
fill the clerk duties and other projects that Jessica was leading?
I think what Jessica and I a little bit have to do is to bring you a solution and ask for approval. We've thought about this 6 different directions and I don't know exactly what's going to work.
And I think when we bring back the resolution to a point, it would be a perfect time to talk about, or bring that solution to you.
Okay.
I agree.
Sounds good. And then that would come along on the 10th?
10th or the 22nd, one of those two.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds good.
It's on a Wednesday because we're.
Yeah, because of veterans.
Okay.
And then
we
on
have
Monday.
Monday, the following one.
Yeah, it turns around quick. That's why the 22nd.
Oh, wait, it's the 10th, we don't have, the 11th is not on the 11th?
Better send a
Veterans
reminder out
Day.
Yeah.
that week.
It's
Right.
Veterans Day, we're not allowed to host city business on federal holidays.
So council meeting's the 10th and
Yep.
then the 22nd of
Yep.
next.
Wednesday and Monday, that makes sense, right?
And
Outstanding.
in December, we do have a change of date as well. December is December 9th and then 22nd, I believe is what we decided at the beginning of the year.
Gotcha.
Well, the 9th is the second Thursday.
Ninth was.
Yeah,
correct,
the 9th is
The only one of the
normal.
next
It's
four.
22nd, yeah.
Is
Yeah.
the, yes, the next one's on a Wednesday as well.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So say that again?
It's just the 22nd is a change in.
We'll send out the
December.
calendar.
Instead of Christmas Eve, it's Christmas.
Okay, so,
In the
Whatever.
back of your.
Last day's draft, yep.
We won't remember that. Send out an email. Before.
so is there anything else we need to specifically get into now that would be helpful?
No, I think that we got some clarity on what you're looking at next steps for.
Okay, perfect. And then I guess, part of maybe that discussion of, with the interim, the resolution to name you as interim, we should probably discuss some of the details on that. I don't know if we want to do that now or at a later date. I mean,
We see what they come back with.